Coming up on the program, we're going to hook up our irrigation system, and I'll take you through step by step on how we're doing it. It's all from Dripworks.com.
If you're new to our channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Joy Baird. Today it's time for us to hook up our irrigation system in not only our raised beds, but in the traditional ground where we do have some crops growing. And total disclaimer and transparency, all the products you'll see us hooking up is courtesy of Dripworks.com. They are a sponsor of our Garden Talk radio show here in 2020 that's heard on 16 stations across the United States and on podcast replay. So what we're going to start with here is the basis of the whole irrigation system, and that is the filters and the timers and the pressure regulators. So what I've got here, it's a reducer. It reduces the poundage of pressure coming out of your faucet, and you do need that, as well as we have a backflow regulator that prevents the liquid or the water from backflowing into. That's part of many municipalities' requirements and sometimes law based on where you live. So we've got that. We've got that's the white portion here is the pressure reduction of it. Then we've got the timer. Now, Dripworks.com has a variety of manual timers, battery operated timers, programmable timers like this one is, as well as Wi-Fi timers. So you can choose whatever you want on that. We're going to show you what we're using here, and it kind of gives you a guideline on what you could potentially utilize in your growing situation. So this is a Galcon 11000L, and it's got a programmable timer. We've got it. Our program is going to be set up 7 days a week, 3 times for a day for 20 minutes at a time. Now we can choose to reduce that or increase that as we see how that system, and that was just an arbitrary number that we came up with at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 5 p.m. for 20 minutes, so entitling 1 hour of watering per day. All right, so we've got our water spout coming out of the house in an urban setting here under the porch. And then we've got a Y here because this hose is for just normal watering activity that's not associated with the garden. I've got the backflow regulator on. Then I've got this T here, or this Y here, not a T, this Y. So now I'm going to hook up all of this. Now, when we do this, you want the timer to be in front of the filter. This filter is needed because you can clog your drip emitters up, and there's your removable filter there, and it can be cleaned. If you're using well water, clean well water, or municipality water, you're not going to have an issue. If you use like pond water or potentially a dirty rain barrel, this is a very, very important thing, but it would be recommended always to have a filter so you're not having to figure out what's clogged up. So now this is all put together, I'm just going to tighten this up, and because this here is set up to the point where I don't have to continue to rotate, I can just maneuver that up there, get that tight. Don't over tighten it. Again, these are plastic parts. They work phenomenal, but anytime you over tighten it because you want to be the Hulk, you're going to bust something. So okay, we've got this set up. This will time out, or the screen will go away after so many seconds, but we don't need that. And the battery will typically last the entire season, if not longer, but I would recommend replacing it each year so you don't have an issue. So the way this is set up, we'll get our feeder line and we'll hook it up to here, and then we'll start running it to our beds. But I had to dig a little deeper here just because of the way our system is set up. Your system can be very, very different, but we're going to get the feeder line in, we'll hook this up, and then we will start running our drip lines to our raised beds. One additional thing, before you leave the area in which you have gotten this all put together, I would recommend putting all these pieces together, getting them tight. You know, you don't need to use a tool, you can just use your hands. Then the water is on, and I've turned this valve on, and I'm checking to make sure there's no leaks. And there's no leaks, so that's good because this is going to be on all the time because it's on a timer. If you have a drip or a drop coming out and you're like, oh, it's not a big deal, multiply that out over months at a time and how much water you can waste. So this all looks good. Let's go get the feeder line and get that ready to hook up to the filter here. All right, so I've got our feeder line or our main line. There's a couple of different terms in which is given to this. This is a 1/2 inch black PVC pipe. Now we will roll it out, and we've dug a trench. It's about 3 to 5 inches deep along our beds and all the way down to the other side of the garden for the sole purpose of convenience. At the end of the year, I'll take and blow this line out, and then we'll go ahead and drain the emitters out, but this will keep it underground so we can mow and so we don't have to worry about tripping over it. Again, these are ways that we're doing it. This is just kind of giving you ideas on how you can do your irrigation. So now we have to have some way of hooking this up into the filter. So nope, no tools are required. You can just take, and this is a device in which it will screw into the filter. And what we want to do is we just want to push it into the 1/2 inch pipe, get it all the way in, and then to secure it, we crank this down and it pinches up against there, and that's not coming out at all. So this also has a washer in it so it doesn't drip. So they already come in pre-assembled there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this out, put it under the fence, and then get it hooked up to the filter. Okay, so we're just going to hook this up. You don't want to kink this pipe, otherwise it's going to form in that and you're going to have reduction in flow. So if we need to, we can always dig a little more out. Hook this up. Finger tight. We don't need to crank it with a wrench or a pipe wrench or anything like that. Okay. We are on. Nothing's going to come through this until the timer gets to the time to release it. We can't override that once we get everything hooked up to make sure it will work fine. So with that being said there, now we can backfill this side here. But before you backfill anything, I would recommend doing everything at once, turning everything on, making sure everything works, and then backfilling be the very, very last thing you do. So let's talk about the trench here. Now we've got a rock here, we're going to get rid of that. What you want to be aware of is not to lay this directly on rock or very porous material, simply being because when water goes to the pipe actually vibrates, and if there's rocks or sharp items, that pipe will sit there and vibrate against that until it punctures a hole in it. So keep that in mind when you're laying any type of pipe, whether it's irrigation, water, whatever the case is. All right, so with any project, you always want to have just a little bit of extra pipe, and we did end up with that. We ended up about 4 to 5 foot extra. Okay, so we're going to use Dripworks drip tape. Now there's 3 different categories of drip tape. We're going with the low flow, which is a 100 feet, 5/8, 15 mil, 8 inch on center drippers, and low flow is 20 gallons per hour. They have several other models that is more increased water per hour, but we felt that this, and they recommended this would be best for our raised beds and our containers. So the first thing we want to do, we've got our feeder line or our main line here. We have a couple of options when it comes to laying out our beds here. We can take and puncture the hole and put one hole in our main pipe and then run this drip tape back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, so it's one continuous feed and not have 3 holes punctured in the main line feeding it. Either way will work. I'm looking at the most convenient way, the most time-saving way, but still have the most impactable result when it comes to getting our crops watered. So I'm going to get this cut, we're going to get it laid out, and then we'll come back and show you what we have concluded be the best situation for our growing raised beds on whether we do 3 rows or one continuous feed of the drip tape to water our tomatoes. All right, so we've decided to do one long run of the drip tape. Now we also will cover the drip tape up once we get it hooked up to the main line here. We'll then go in there and strategically staple it down next to the plants, and then we will mulch over it, and that will give it a longer life than just being exposed to the sun. So how we're going to do this is, there's different fittings for different applications. So that's why I'm not naming off each individual part here, because it'll be different for everybody. But essentially this is a 5/8 converter that will go in the drip tape to a 1/4 inch barb. Now this will not attach to a 1/4 inch piece of drip tape or smaller 1/4 inch pipe, so keep that in mind. So this is just like when we fitted it up to the filter. Push it on and then just twist it and it locks in and it's not coming off. So now we'll go down to the main line here, and you can punch a hole with any type of device, but we're going to at least try to get this somewhat figured out in a nice clean manner here. Now again, with this drip tape, per 100 foot, it will emit 20 gallons per hour at an 8 pound per square inch. So if for every 100 feet, it's going to allow 20 gallons over the course of an hour. So we've got this set up on 3 20-minute durational segments. So it's 1 hour per day that our system will be running at 3 different times. So let's see here. Let's put this down. Now that we've got that there, we do have an emitter here that's outside of the bed, but we will just plug that up in some form or fashion because everything else will be in the bed. So that's just a minor inconvenience the way we're going to set our system up. Now if you were doing this a different way, you could have your main line or your feeder line before installation of the beds running underneath all the beds and then coming up in the center, and you could run off that. So it's many different ways in which you can do this. So now we'll get our staples and we'll come in here. We'll get next to the plant. I've got an emitter here, which that's going to go down. I've got an emitter here which water the sunflower. I've got an emitter here that will water that plant, and then another emitter there. So it'll get fairly close to these plants. Now these plants are planted on 18 inches, every 18 inches, so it kind of works out. So I'm going to go through here and steeple it down, and then we'll be able to move on to the next bed. But as we get done, we're going to cover this up with mulch and soil. That way the sun doesn't, it'll last much, much longer, this drip tape will. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in here and just steeple it down to get it so it's not flopping around. And then we will go ahead and do a trial run and kick the system on and see how this works. All right, so once we get to the end of our drip tape that we want to install in the bed, we'll cut it. And then you use this little device here. It's an end cap type of device. So what you're going to do is to roll it in, fold it over a couple of times, and then pull it tight, and then that's your end cap. That's not going to let the water drip, run out. Now, before we turn the system on, we need to go down to the very end and put an end cap on that as well, and that's a different way because that is that's a 1/2 inch PVC versus this drip tape. All right, so with this 1/2 inch pipe, you're using a double ring, and what you'll do is you'll run it in, fold this over, pinch it over, then run it back under, and that prevents the water. That creates an end piece there. So now that we got that done, we can bypass the filter or the timer and see how that first bed reacts to the way we've set it up. Okay, so we've turned it on for the trial run, see how everything is going to go. No leaking out the end cap, so that's good. The only thing is if we would have ran 3 straight, connected it to the main or the feeder, the main line or the feeder line, we wouldn't have the kinks that you see here. However, the flow is the same on this side here, where it's coming directly out of the main line, as it is over on this here, the end of our continuous one pipe or one continuous drip tape, instead of doing 3 individual drip tapes. So manufacturing wise, I believe that they would advise to run singular rows so you don't have the kink. However, we're going to go ahead and leave the kink in there. We do have the additional parts needed if for some reason this creates a leak because of the kink. We can immediately pull it and correct it by direct feeding it into the main line, as we did, as you saw with the initial first pipe there. So now we'll go to, we overrode the timer. We'll kill that override so it will continue to go back on its normal cycle, but we don't have any leaks here. We don't have any leaks at the end, so it works out very well. So now what we'll do is, you don't have to watch it because we're not going to film it, the repetitiveness doing it this particular way for the next 4 beds. And then when we get to our raised bed portion of the garden with our grow bags, then we will do a different method of running pipe, and we'll show you how we'll do that. And that's all courtesy of dripworks.com as well. All right, so we've got the irrigation system hooked up in our raised beds. And the first bed, we ran it from the outside in. Now on these other beds here, I learned along the way, and we went ahead and dug beside the bed and then ran it underneath. Yeah, there is an emitter in here, but it's just going to hydrate the soil. And this is the way we ran this particular bed. Again, your system and your layout will be completely different in most applications than ours, but this is a guide on how we are doing it, so you can kind of get some tips of things to do and not do. And then these are beets here that we've ran our short runs, and then around our peas, which will soon be cucumbers when the peas fizzle out, with that there. So the way we've got it connected is we ran underneath and ran it to our main line here. You can see an adapter here. I punctured and tore the pipe more than what I needed to, so I had to cut that piece out and put a sleeve in there essentially for that. So we've got that done, and then we've also got this bed here with our shallots and our pole beans, green beans, and potatoes. Ran short of the 5/8 drip tape, so I went with the 1/4 inch emitter, 1/4 inch drip emitters here that are on 6-inch spacings. And I did the same thing over here. We did for the drip tape, we needed the big fasteners. With the drip line here, we just plugged it right in with 1/4 inch fittings right there, and it works very, very well. So that portion is done. Now we're going to go to our raised, or our grow bags, and I'll show you how we'll install our system in the grow bag, so it gives you an idea of how you could potentially do it in yours. Okay, so this is a 60-gallon grow bag that we've got beets in. Now you can set this up however you want. The way we're doing it, this is the 1/4 inch drip line with 6-inch emitters. Now we could coil and coil, but from past experience we know that if you kind of, for us, if you kind of put it in the center and around the outside, you don't have to particularly go to every single plant because the moisture will drip and go across the grow bag. In order to get it to the grow bag, this is 1/4 inch feeder line, feeder line. This is our main line. This is a 1/4 inch. There's no emitters on this. This is smooth pipe. Once we get in the bed, I put a coupling on here, and then that will roll and feed that bed. So all I'm going to do is pop a hole in there. Water runs out that's in the pipe already. Put your 1/4 inch fitting in there. Snap it in. Get a good handle on this. There we go. Now I can cover that up and get that out of the way. Now whenever you're cutting your 1/4 inch line here, it's got your drip emitters. For example here, all right, so we've got it coiled here, we've got it hooked up in the main line, our drip line's here. Now again, I'm going to put another connector here, run it underground, then bring it up in our next bed here. So the trick that I found is, these are on 6-inch spacing. Where the tip of my fingers are at, that's where the emitters are at. So if we're going to cut it, I always cut it at the center of that, put my fitting on, make sure the one dripper is in the bed, and then my line that doesn't have any fittings or any drippers on it, then that will connect, and then it'll go underground, pop up here in this bed, and then I've cut the pipe here half and half so I can keep some of it in the bed. Now this bed here has pumpkins in it, so I'm going to make sure the emitters get close to the pumpkins and also do a coil out here because, as you know, if you've gardened long, the roots just don't stay right here. The roots span out and search for nutrients and moisture. So by adding this loop here to add more moisture here and get the roots to spread out a little more. All right, so as we're hooking this up, another thing in which you can do to maximize the materials you have is this is our ground cherries here. We've got a romaine lettuce and we got some kohlrabi in here. I've done one ring around the bed here. Now I've cut this for a reason I'll explain in a minute. This is coming from the previous bed. This is our line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 1/4 inch T in here. Then I'll connect the in-bed line. It's just a friction fit. And then that's going to help maximize our line. Now over here, where I'm going to come out of this bed and go to our other bed here. Now I've got, coming out of this bed here, I'm going to add another T, fasten that. And this is how we're doing it to maximize. So now this 1/4 inch T will fit into the main line. I'll bury the main line, run it over to our bed with our spaghetti squash and butternut squash. And if we need to, we can pin it down with the steeples. But that's a way we can get a circle and keep the line moving without having a lot of extra overlap for this particular application. Now you don't have to run the pipe underground. It makes it easier to trim, to mow, to walk around. You're not tripping over it. But also in the fall, if you're in a climate where it freezes and you do not hook an air compressor up to the main line and blow everything out and open the ends up of your main line, you will need to pull it up because it can damage the line even if you just unhook it there and let gravity drip out. There is going to be residual water in the line that can expand and actually damage the drip emitters in your drip tape and your drip line. So that's what we'll do is we'll hook an air compressor on the main line up there, blow it out, unhook the end piece there, blow that line out, and then blow and make sure all the air is out of it. If there's a couple of drops of water, it's not a big deal. It's whenever that line is still full of water, that's when it's damaging. But this is going to be a permanent fixture in our garden for years to come. So if you've never used an irrigation system or you're thinking about it as the summer months begin to get awful hot and you're tired of watering with a can, Dripworks.com is your location for all things irrigation wise, whether it's drip tape, drip line, containers, large fields, or anything in between. We want to thank Dripworks for donating the products that we have used and shown you, and we hope that you find this episode educational and informative to how you can hook up your own irrigation system in your garden.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.